Hi, and welcome to VIBEZ Daily. This is a daily devotional curated by VIBEZ Church to help you practice the way of Jesus and be all that God has called you to be. You have joined us for our year-long series titled Devoted. Acts 2:42 tells us that the followers of Jesus were devoted to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. This podcast was created to provide context and commentary for what you read each day. Just before our friends begin discussing today's reading, we want to invite you not only for fellowship, but for prayer as well. We have created the VIBE Daily Chat Group to offer you fellowship and a community where you can state your observations, ask questions about the reading or the podcast. You can join us by downloading the VIBEZ Church app in your favorite app store. Click Join the Conversation and join us today. And finally, we hope that you can join us for prayer. Prayer happens Monday through Friday, and more information on that can be found on the VIBEZ Church app under prayer. Now, let's begin our conversation on today's reading.
Yo, welcome back to the VIBEZ Daily Podcast. It is day 137, and we are so excited to have you back with us in our year-long series we have titled Devoted, as we are journeying through the entire Bible, starting in Genesis, currently in 2 Chronicles. We'll finish the book of Revelation by the end of this year. I am back again, joined by my wife, Victoria. So excited to have her with me today as we continue to discuss King Hezekiah, the most recent king of Judah, in our study so far. He will cover the rest of today's topic. Really, all of today will be just about King Hezekiah and the 3 chapters that we have here today.
Yeah.
But we left off with him really starting some reform and reestablishing some practices and some rituals that David had established before.
Yeah.
But the people had just fallen off on. And so that was kind of in the end of chapter 29. Chapter 30, we get a Passover, a celebration of a Passover here in chapter 30. What do you think was interesting about this Passover that Hezekiah establishes?
So just so that I'm reading this correctly, it seems like they should have done the Passover at a certain time, but they kind of missed that in terms of trying to clean up the temple, consecrate all the people in the temple, that like they weren't able to do it at the exact time. But this is something he still desired to do, and then wanted to send out a letter to the people to just invite all of Judah and Ephraim and Manasseh and stuff.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and again reminds me of Moses, right? Because I don't know if you recall, there was that time when essentially some of the people were unclean and could not observe Passover with everyone else at the typical time.
Right.
And so they come to him and ask him what they should do. Moses goes to the Lord, wise, and asks for an idea, and the Lord says, well, let them observe it in the second month instead, right?
Yeah.
So similar concept where it's typically observed in the first month. They weren't prepared for it at that time, and so they observe it in the second month. He kind of pleases him, and that's what they did at that time. So I'll say what was interesting to me is when we read it in Kings, I don't know if you recall, the first mention of Passover is until Josiah.
Yeah.
King Josiah. And I remember at that time, I was like, they ain't observed a Passover this whole time?
Yeah,
like,
since Joshua's time, I think that's what
it said, right? Like, and I thought that was interesting because here it tells us in verse 5 that essentially the end of that they just hadn't observed it often as prescribed.
Yes.
Right?
Or in that way, because I feel like even when we get to Josiah, it's like no Passover like this one has been. Yeah.
Which I think is, there you go, there's that semantics, why that's important, right? Just that understanding of that context and description, because again, the way I interpreted it back then was like they haven't done a Passover once, and it's like, okay, they've probably observed it in some manner, just has not been this great congregational community Passover in the way that Josiah eventually will do.
Right.
But like I said, this one we don't get Hezekiah's Passover at all in 2 Kings, which I just thought was really interesting, that we at least see that he does try to observe a Passover.
And like you said, try, because he sent out this grand letter, and some people just laughed and scorned and mocked him, and or the messengers and stuff, and didn't come. But a lot of people did, though. So
right. Which is, to your point, back to why there was not one like his in Josiah's, right? Because Josiah's, we'll get to, is still different than what ultimately Hezekiah was able to pull off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you thought was interesting about the Passover?
I think it was interesting in his prayer to the Lord in verse, I think it's like 18,
Okay.
19. He said, "May the good Lord pardon everyone who sets his heart to seek God." And it's this heart word, because I feel like that's one thing that's been missing throughout this entire time is like they keep on saying like he did not follow him with his whole heart, or the people did not set their hearts on the Lord. And so like I think I love that, to see his prayer is for like the people who have actually set their hearts to seek God and to like, at least choose God, because here we see people choosing and not choosing,
Yeah.
And so I do think that like he's like, please just honor those who are at least trying to choose you.
Yeah.
Do this.
Yeah. It's good. That's good. It's just God's desire too, right? Not just Hezekiah's. So it's definitely a prayer after God's own heart. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting that kind of they kept it going. Verse 23, I thought it was interesting that they decided to observe like 7 more days. And that like Hezekiah just provided this big buffet. This is the way I looked at it. With 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep, right? And
a big barbecue.
Yeah, that they just kind of kept it going. And there was great rejoicing in Jerusalem, for nothing like this was known since the days of Solomon, son of David, the king of Israel, right? Which is what verse 26 tells us. And so, I don't know. This Passover was exceptional, even despite the fact that everybody didn't, decide to come and some stuff. It was still great. For those that were there, they experienced something unlike anything else, right?
Yeah.
And I'm, probably some FOMO for those that missed out, right? That like weren't there to hear about it later. But for those that were there, man, they enjoyed it. They enjoyed Passover. They had a good time. They were able to be, experience what God had initially designed for them to experience each year. Which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Anything else in 30 before we?
No. He keeps going, right? In 31.
Yep. We still have more Hezekiah. And so, all that's completed, and then he kind of just continues to work towards kind of removing, I'll just kind of read this first verse here in 31. It's just, all this was completed. All Israel who had attended went out to the cities of Judah. They broke up the sacred pillars, chopped down the Asherah poles, tore down the high places and altars throughout Judah and Benjamin. And so just interesting. He started with the temple. Yeah. Right? He had the temple restored, repaired, host a party to celebrate that essentially, right? This Passover. And then they get back to work. Like, we got to now get out into the rest of the city and kind of get rid of these other idols. And so I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. It's like he almost like started with the temple, brought them there to party, and then inspired the rest of the people to kind of go after God.
Yeah, it's kind of like on your way home, if you see like any idols, just knock them down. Yeah. Just get rid of them on your way back to your house. Yeah. It just seems like that's what they did. That they was just like rolling around town. It's kind of like, suck butt. Maybe not the slug. Not slug. Maybe not the slug butt.
Not slug butt, though.
I'm just saying. But, just knock it down real quick,
Yeah, no, that's good. But, I mean, still, though, to me, it was the inspiration. It's not even just that, like, they did that on the way, but the fact that they actually did it. Yeah. Like, he did inspire them, because we've talked about this. It was hard for these leaders, even the ones that pursued God, to get the people of Israel, or Judah in this case, to actually follow God too. Yeah. Right? And so the fact that he could motivate them enough to actually go through with that, I thought was interesting.
It is. I'm proud of the people. Yeah. And then they came and they brought a bunch of stuff to these Levites, Levites.
Yeah.
Priests and Levites to be out here struggling.
Yeah.
But
They all right.
They
wasn't all good either.
They sure wasn't. They was cutting up too.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he reestablishes kind of their divisions, their rotation, essentially, of sorts of serving the Lord, kind of brings that back. And then, as you said, kind of calls for an offering. And again, reminiscent of Moses, right? Asking for the people, whoever feels so led, has it on their heart to give to this project, to build a tabernacle. Because he said he comes back and he's like, yo, what are all these piles?
Yeah. Grain and all this stuff.
What is all this stuff?
Well, mine says heaps.
That's what yours says. Yeah, mine says pipes. Yeah. And it's just like they began bringing the offering to the Lord's temple. We ate said about there's plenty left over. Like, this is the abundance. This is what is left over.
That's that overflow.
It's just, I don't know. I thought that was so awesome. That like once you saw the people again, to me, it's just, this is the potential when the people of God are on the same page.
Come on.
And everyone contributes. There is abundance.
Abundance. Nobody lacks. And there's overflow.
Abundance. I'll never forget, man. I did the math once at our last church. We were in a campaign trying to essentially invite people to bring their whole tithe.
I remember you did
just
that.
Bring 10%.
Yeah.
I did the math. I said if everyone in our church made minimum wage.
Yeah.
We lived in Orange County, California. People weren't making minimum wage. Okay, that is where our church was located. Most people weren't. There are some, but most people weren't, right? But I just said, I'm gonna give y'all benefit out. If everyone made minimum wage and worked a full-time job, if we just took 10% of your minimum wage income, if our whole church did that, if 100% of the people participated, not only could we have paid off our millions of dollars of debt that our church owed, paid off millions of dollars of debt, like 3 times over almost. Like, not only could we have paid off that debt, but the amount of money we could have put back into our community, stuff we could have done. We could have finished the building. Like, there's a whole other building project that was going to cost millions whenever we got to it. Like, we could have not just paid off our debt, built a whole nother building. There's so many things we could have, if we just all contributed our part. 10%. That's if it was minimum wage. Then account the fact that most of us made more than minimum wage, right? Yeah. So, like, I was like, this is what it looks like, though. Mm-hmm. If everyone contributes, there's abundance.
Yeah.
Abundance.
Yeah.
The problem is, in many cases, I'm not just speaking about that church, the average church, you have about 10% of the people who give 80% of what comes in.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like most churches are running based off of the generosity of 10% of their people.
Yeah.
I'm like, but abundance is possible. You don't have stuff left over looking around like, who else do we give this to?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my church rant for the day.
No, it's all right.
But
it's good though, because as he said, like, we keep seeing that the temple goes neglected, the people aren't paying the tax or the tithe to the church, and things are lacked and undone, and they can't work and dedicate. And now it's said to some shame, people don't always do the right thing with the tithes, but that's on them. Yeah. And the Lord, listen, we're gonna be like, Lord, you judge. Yeah. But like you said, if I do my part, and bring it, you said it's not even just that, like, these Levites don't lack. It's like you said, the Lord's house doesn't lack in general. And this was specifically important because this was where the Lord dwelled. Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. I just always get excited when I kind of see this stuff. Because like I said, it's just, we have so much potential, man. We do. Church has so much potential. In the Lord, this is what he teaches us. And this is what Jesus came and taught. Like, this open hand, like, don't worry about your clothes or next food, next meal. Like, don't worry about those things. Yeah. Like, I'm going to provide for you. So don't keep that hand closed because you want to keep hold of it. I feel like you said the times in our lives where we've been the most generous, we've also seen some of the most blessing. Like, And that's just how the world, like, we're supposed to be conduits, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Last thought on this, and we'll get to 32 because I'm on my soapbox today. Yeah, because even I think there's a bigger picture challenge too, not even just on the local church level, but on the universal ecumenical church, the church altogether. Because another math problem that I did was just seeing, our church is located here in the Columbia, South Carolina area, and man, there's a lot of churches here. We're in the Bible Belt, it's the South, church on every corner. Multiple churches on the same corner half the time. And I wondered, like, what if all of our churches joined the same initiative, like financially? What would be possible? I was like, we could literally outdo the government.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if we just look at what government programs that, what taxes pay for and how it does that, like, literally the church would be stronger than the government.
Yeah.
If the church came together and if we all said, hey, you know what we want to do? We want to end homelessness.
Right, in our city.
We don't want a person to be without a home in the city of Columbia. If every church came on and said that, we could literally build an apartment community and put people in home rent free.
Yep.
Something the government can't afford to do. Because there's enough churches if we just gave a portion of our, not even all of it, we just gave a portion of our tithes and offering and our general, like, our funds and our whatever, we could do that. We could literally end homelessness.
Yeah.
We could end hunger in our city.
We're just following the commands of Jesus, right?
We could do it together. We can't do it individually.
Nope.
There's not one church individually that can pull that off. But together, and I'm like, that's what it looks like. This abundance. Like, together there's abundance. So that's my rant. Anybody watching this, bring your church together. Let's figure it out. Let's figure this out. Let's start a revolution.
Love it.
And a revival, man. But anyway, 32. Something called out here, right, is that this is happening simultaneously as Israel is being conquered and exiled.
Yes.
Right? So Judah, we have two kingdoms here, Judah and Israel. They all used to be one kingdom. Now they're kind of two kingdoms, southern and northern kingdom. At the time that Hezekiah reigns, Israel is conquered and exiled to and whatnot. So this Assyrian king that comes to get them, that comes after Hezekiah, essentially has just conquered Israel.
Yeah, marched off with Israel. Yeah.
And he's coming after Hezekiah and Judah now, right? And so that's the backdrop in chapter 32 as Hezekiah is going back and forth as the king of Assyria. It's like, it's not just, oh, hey, there's this random guy that came up and decided to start stuff.
Right.
Like, no, this is literally the guy that just took your brothers away.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so this happens. Talk to me about 32. What jumped out to you as the king of Assyria comes after Hezekiah?
I really appreciate Hezekiah because I feel like even like how it's written here, it just showed that like they spoke and they acted confidently in the Lord here. Like it just wasn't like one or the other. Like here they stopped up the springs of water. Like that's just a bold move in the first place. Like that you like, we not bowing down to y'all. We not letting you just drink our water for free. Why you trying to attack us? So they like stopping up springs, and he started building up walls and getting weapons ready. Like it didn't look cowardly to me, right? Like it looked like he was strengthening himself, and even his words in verse 7 is very Joshua-like, right? Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid or dismayed before this king, right? Like there more, and then gives you more. Now we got Elisha that I'm feeling. That's my man. So then it's like, for there are more with us than with him.
Yep.
With him is an army of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and fight our battles. Like bars, like they're going in now. Like, and I love it because look, at not only is he talking this talk, he's like gearing up to like fight.
Yeah. This is a really good passage to me on. I feel like it's just a great picture of like spiritual warfare in our lives. Because I feel like you see this clear, I'm going to call this a word from the Lord, right? A word that like Hezekiah is speaking. Like he is not just saying this on his own. Like he is speaking like this is what God has said to us. Like we know God is on our side, right? We know he is stronger than anybody else. Be strong and courageous. Joshua been telling us this for generations, right? Like we know these things. This is the word of the Lord. I'm reciting God's word back to him right now and to you all. But then there's getting ready to be this mental battle. The enemy's biggest weapon is lies. Yeah. Right? And like literally the king and his messengers just like they just come and start spewing lies. You really gonna listen to him? You really gonna listen to Hezekiah?
Yeah.
Like you did not see what I just did and I just pulled, who I just dragged away. Did your God save them? He ain't saved them. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the way that this rest of the story plays out, and it's just like now the people of Israel have a choice. Do I listen to the Lord? Yeah. Or do I listen to the enemy? Yeah. Do I believe his lies or do I believe the Lord's truth? And like I look at this picture and I'm just like, man, this is I don't know, this is how warfare plays out in our lives. Like we have scripture that tells us the truth. Right. It tells us we're more than conquerors. It tells us he that is in us is greater than he that is in the world. It tells us, nothing can separate us from his love. It tells us all things going to work together for the good of those who love him, called according to his purpose. It tells us, like, he'll never leave us nor forsake us. It tells us, like, you will have tribulation, but don't worry, I'll overcome the world. Like, we got all these promises and these truths. And the enemy gonna come in and be like, God ain't do it for them. What makes you think he gonna do it for you? Yeah. Or he didn't do it for you this time. Yeah. This one time that you prayed for that, he didn't give you what you want. What makes you think he gonna give it to you now? Exactly.
Like he's always holding out or can't do.
Yeah, like
from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this. Like again, this is starting at verse. I don't know. I was kind of rambling here, but. This is starting at verse 9. It's like, while King Sennacherib, I've not tried his name once since we've been sitting here, but Sennacherib of Assyria with all his armed forces besieged Lachish, sent his servants to Jerusalem against King Hezekiah of Judah and against all those of Judah who were in Jerusalem, saying, this is what the king says, what are you relying on that you remain in Jerusalem under siege? Isn't Hezekiah misleading you to give you over to death by famine and thirst when he says, the Lord our God will keep us from the grasp of the king of Syria? Didn't Hezekiah himself remove his high places and his altars and say to Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship before one altar, you must burn incense on it? Don't you know what I and my fathers like? These questions, like this is the devil. Yeah. Did he really say you couldn't eat from that tree?
Right. I said from the beginning. Yeah.
Right. Did he? Are you really the son of God?
Right.
Right. Like, if you jumped off of this, wouldn't he save you? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just these questions of like, are you sure? Yeah. That's what you want to believe? I'm like, this is our life. It's just a beautiful picture.
It is. And I think it's crazy though. Like he's bringing up stuff like famine and thirst. I'm like, but wait a minute. Our God provides the rain for our vegetation. He provides the rain for our wells. Like, what are you talking about? And what are you talking about?
It's just like
lies,
half-truths, twist it just a little. Say enough true things that make you doubt. Right? Say enough true things that make you doubt. Yeah. Like, yes, indeed. What he says here in 13, don't you know that what I and my fathers have done to all the people of the lands? Have any of the national gods of this land been able to rescue their land from my power? Technically, no. You're right.
You're right, because they went over God.
That's true, but they didn't go against my God. They didn't go against Yahweh. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes. Is that a true statement? Absolutely. Is that the truth? No.
Yeah.
The truth is Yahweh is God.
Yeah.
We serve the Lord of armies.
Mm-hmm. I think when we were recording this earlier, I mentioned that, like, when he's talking about, well, didn't Hezekiah take away these high places and these altars? You know, where you guys did sacrifices? Like, yes, he did do that, but no, it did not upset our God, because those weren't even for our God. Mm-hmm. Like you said, like, it's just these lies. Like, you not even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, just, I don't know.
Yeah, but we don't even get to see in the Second Chronicles here that in 2 Kings 19 showed us was like this long response that Isaiah the prophet gives. He gives this big old long response and then proclaims the downfall of Assyria eventually, and because Hezekiah had gone to him with torn clothes and sackcloth and ashes, and he's like, don't even worry about it. Yep. We don't even get all of that. And Kings also gives us more information about, like, because when it said, when they returned to the camp of Assyria, that the Lord had sent an angel. It says here the Lord sent an angel who cut off all the mighty warriors. Mm-hmm. But Kings have that detail of, like, it was like a plague that they sent, and it killed 185,000 like soldiers in the camp. They just woke up and they was all dead around them. Yeah. Like, and so I think he said he's talking all this talk, and the Lord is like, don't even worry about it. Yeah. Like, once again, one of these situations we keep saying, like, you don't even have to show up to fight, like, for my name, for my name's sake. Y'all just don't be dead. Yeah. And then he goes back home and gets killed by his own sons.
Yeah, no, it's so good. Just, you said, like, again, another example, of course, of just God fighting that battle on their behalf, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't have to lift a finger, essentially. And I don't know. Like I said, I just feel so challenged, just like seeing this play out. Mm-hmm. Particularly, again, just the temptation to doubt. Because I said this when we talked about New Kings. I was impressed that the people of Israel stayed faithful to Hezekiah, or Judah. I say faithful to Hezekiah. I was impressed because everything else we've seen from Judah to this point and from Israel to this point says they would have ran scared to these guys and just gave up. You know what I'm saying? But going back to how even Hezekiah motivated them and inspired them to actually turn and just destroy all these idols and turn back to the Lord, like, it's clear that he really inspired them and motivated them to be faithful to the Lord. Yeah. In a way that we had not seen in generations. Yeah. And I think it comes that even when the enemy comes and tries to tempt them, they still stayed faithful. And so, like, I just want to give Judah credit, because we don't see it often, right? We love to bash them for how they turn from the Lord and they just go their wicked ways and do those things. I feel like they had a real enemy, and I'm not even talking about a threat of like war, but a threat of deceit and lies, the way that the enemy really works, and they still stayed faithful. I think that's huge.
They did, yeah.
So this is interesting as we get to the end of 32. Could wrap up here soon. We get this reference to Hezekiah being proud, and because of that, like, there's this kind of wrath on him, starting in verse 25. Obviously, 2 Kings tells us exactly what he did. This is when he kind of does the tour of his palace and invites the Babylonians in and shows them everywhere what's going on, right? But we don't get that. We don't get exactly what happened. It just kind of says, hey, there was this pride that he had, and ultimately that led to his downfall. I didn't mean to necessarily skip over kind of his sickness piece, but that was another thing that was referred to in 2 Kings, that he gets sick and kind of prays for those additional 15 years, or prays for more time, but gets 15 years. But then starting in 27, this is where, again, more of that, like, development, advancement, some of the things that he did. Verse 30 is where I was referring to earlier. Same Hezekiah blocked the outlets of the water of the upper Gihon and channeled it smoothly downward and westward to the city of David. So he like channels this river to essentially provide water to the city, and some other things. But yeah, anything else kind of in the second half of 32? Those are just kind of some quick points. But anything else in the second half of 32 that you thought was particularly significant?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. Then this account of the story in verse 31 is like, okay, so yeah, these envoys came, like you mentioned, from Babylon, right? To inquire about this sign he had done. And it's interesting because in my verse in verse 30, my version in verse 31 said God left him to himself, or like God like was not with him in that moment in order to test him and know all that was in his heart. And yeah, like it was this pride and arrogance that he mentioned that in 26, right, that he has this pride in his heart, right, this pride and arrogance that shows up, and like God's not, I guess, I don't know, coddling him and like, keeping him, so what's you gonna do when you're on your own? Like, what's gonna come out of your heart? And instead of like probably what David would have done, it just been like, oh yes, it's, everything I have is from the Lord. Is the Lord's. Like nothing to really show off here. Like this is all God's.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Hezekiah, I think it comes after this whole like, telling about all these great possessions he has and all the things that he's done. He's like probably like, yeah, this is me.
Yeah. Well, I think like it's not exactly chronological because I think it's also, like you said, what you're talking about in 30 and 31 is referring back to the same thing that you just mentioned in 25 and 26. Right. But like, I think to your point, not just his possessions, but I wonder if there was even a level of arrogance in that he received these additional years. Right. Because the way that my version reads, it's like the Lord spoke to him and gave him a miraculous sign. However, because his heart was proud, Hezekiah didn't respond according to the benefit that had come to him. Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, God gave him this benefit, gave him this gift, this miraculous sign, and he didn't respond to it accordingly. Instead, he responded to it with pride, right? And I think it cautions us to, again, not get so caught up in the promise that God delivers that we forget the promise keeper and the giver, right? Like that we pray and God shows up and does something miraculous, gives us financial blessing or a child or whatever, right? The thing that we're praying for. And then we start to think it's about us, right? Like, I did that. You know what I'm saying? That's mine. I did that. I earned this. I worked my way up from my bootstraps and just forget, like, no, God provided that. And what that should have done was motivated us to serve him more and further, use that for his glory and his kingdom and his advancement, rather than, as you see here, all these possessions, abundant riches and all that he kind of got to, which is what he does, right? He brings them in, gives them on the tour, like, hey, look at all the stuff I got. Right. You know what I'm saying? He takes the Babylonians on the tour, like, look at me. Look at how great this is. Yeah. Instead of saying, like, I'm only standing here today. Literally only standing here today because the Lord gave me more life. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's just a cautionary tale there. Anything else in the 32?
Another shout out to Isaiah. Isaiah the prophet shows up here because he has these visions that have been written down. So looking forward to seeing that later on too.
Good. All right. We have one more day to finish the book of 2 Chronicles. So we'll do that here tomorrow. 4 more chapters to go. But appreciate you guys joining us again today on the VIBEZ Daily podcast. Again, hope that this was helpful and encouraging to you as you read along with us here in the Bible this year. Come back, see us tomorrow. Join us again to finish out the book of 2 Chronicles. But until then, take care. God bless.
Thank you for joining us for the VIBEZ Daily podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, or download our favorite, the VIBEZ Church app. Visit vibes.church/devoted for additional episodes, notes, details, and the latest merch.